Today, I'm going to share a story about myself that will relate to the reading that I'm going to share in just a second. Also, this weekend, we're celebrating many of our youth who have reached important milestones in their lives and faith formation. So the story that I'm going to share comes from my own youth, all the way back to the late 1900s. I love saying that now. It sounds weird, makes me feel really old. So while the story I'm going to tell you is personal to me, it is by no means unique. I believe many of your experiences may be similar, and by telling you my story, I hope that you can hear this biblical story, this very often familiar story, in a slightly different way. Here's the story from Genesis. First this: God created the heavens and the earth. All you see, all you don't see. The earth was a soup of nothingness, a bottomless emptiness, an inky blackness. God's spirit brooded like a bird above the water abyss. God spoke, "Light," and light appeared. God saw the light was good and separated light from dark. God named the light day, he named the dark night. It was evening, it was morning, day one. God spoke, "Sky." In the middle of the waters, separate water from water. God made sky. He separated the water under the sky from the water above sky. And there it was. He named sky the heavens. It was evening. It was morning, day two. God spoke, "Separate. Water beneath heaven, gather into one place. Land appear." And there it was. God named the land earth. He named the pooled water ocean. God saw that it was good. God spoke, "Earth, green up. Grow all varieties of seed-bearing plants, every sort of fruit-bearing tree." And there it was. Earth produced green seed-bearing plants, all varieties, and fruit-bearing trees of all sorts. God saw that it was good. It was evening, it was morning, day three. God spoke, "Lights, come out, shine in heaven's sky, separate day from night. Mark seasons and days and years, lights in heaven's sky to give light to earth." And there it was. God made two big lights, the larger to take charge of day, the smaller to be in charge of night, and he made the stars. God placed them in the heavenly sky to light up earth and oversee day and night, to separate light and dark. God saw it was good. It was evening, it was morning, day four. God spoke, "Swarm, ocean, fill with fish and all sea life. Birds fly through the sky over earth." God created the huge whales, all the swarm of life in the waters, and every kind of species of flying birds. God saw it was good. God blessed them. "Prosper, reproduce, fill ocean, birds reproduce on earth." It was evening, it was morning, day five. God spoke, "Earth, generate life, every sort of kind, cattle and reptiles and wild animals, all kinds." And there it was, wild animals of every kind, cattle of all kinds, every sort of reptile and bug. God saw that it was good. God spoke, "Let us make human beings in our image, make them reflecting our nature, so they can be responsible for the fish in the sea, the birds in the air, the cattle, and yes, earth itself, and every animal that moves in the face of earth." God created human beings. He created them godlike, reflecting God's nature. He created the male and female. God blessed them. "Prosper, reproduce, fill earth, take charge, be responsible for fish in the sea and birds in the air, for every living thing that moves on the face of the earth." Then God said, "I've given you every sort of seed-bearing plant on earth and every kind of fruit-bearing tree, given them to you for food. To all animals and birds, everything that moves and breathes, I give whatever grows out of the ground for food." And there it was. God looked over everything he had made. It was so good, so very good. It was evening, it was morning, day six. Heaven and earth were finished, down to the last detail. By the seventh day, God had finished his work. On the seventh day, he rested from all his work. God blessed the seventh day. He made it a holy day because on that day he rested from his work. All the creating God had done, this is the story of how it all started, of heaven and earth when they were created. So my story begins, as all stories do, where I grew up. Does anybody know where I grew up? Do you remember that? I grew up in the lovely suburbs of Omaha, Nebraska, in what I would describe as an upper middle class home and community. I was never in need. I didn't always get what I wanted, but I had everything I needed for a happy and healthy childhood. My parents were not abusive or uncaring. In fact, I was completely naive that was even a possibility. They wanted a good life for me, but I was the firstborn, which made me the experimental baby. The one that you get to make mistakes on and learn from so your brother can have a better experience than you. But in all seriousness, it was good. One important thing to know about my parents is that while they were very supportive, they also had very high expectations of themselves and of me. There was a right way to do things, and everything you did had to be done well. This applied to everything from cleaning your room to schoolwork to sports. The mentality was simple: do it well or don't do it at all. Leave a place better than you found it. Oh my gosh, we had so many sayings like that. The community in which we lived reinforced this mentality. The upper middle class lifestyle in suburbia revolved around appearances. You had to keep your house maintained, your lawn watered and mowed, your cars clean, your trees trimmed, and wear decent clothes. Taking pride in your appearance was paramount. Doesn't that reek of 90s suburbia? So in this existence of mine, everything was lovely if you were able to meet all of these expectations. But if you didn't, well, they made you less. It meant that you were not good enough, which reflected poorly on you and, by association, your family. In other words, there was a lot of pressure to succeed. Seventh grade was the first time I truly experienced this kind of pressure. It was the first year of middle school, and it was also when you could play sports for your school. That was the first time. So in my particular group of friends, that was really important. In fact, it was important to a lot of kids and families, which meant that there were over 80 seventh graders who wanted to play basketball. But this was way too many. And there was no such thing as everybody plays. We had two teams. So to play, you had to try out. And you either made the team, you were in, or you did not make the team. You got cut because you weren't good enough. So kids practiced relentlessly, knowing that if they made a mistake when it counted during tryouts, they would be done. There was no second chance. You didn't get to redo any of that. At the end of tryouts, coaches posted the team roster, and if your name was there, you celebrated. And if it wasn't there, well, I mean, you didn't celebrate. So it was a huge relief for me to see my name on that piece of paper. It was so stressful, and after watching some of the kids who did not make the team walk away with tears in their eyes, I knew I never wanted to fail like that. And I did a really good job of not failing, of living up to the expectations of my parents and my community. By the time I got to high school, I was in advanced classes and was running varsity cross country and track, but the pressure to be good, to succeed, to be best, oh, that never let up. And so one day during a cross country meet, I was in the middle of a race and all of a sudden I found myself having a hard time breathing. I mean, you're already working hard. It's already hard to breathe, but this was different. I was having a hard time breathing, and it freaked me out. It happened a couple of different times over the course of a month, and I had no idea what was going on. I wasn't sure if it was allergies or if I was developing asthma or something else. All I knew is that it felt awful. Come to find out, wasn't allergies, wasn't asthma. Do you know what it was? Any guesses? Panic attack. I was a junior in high school. The pressure to succeed, to always be better, created this anxiety which grew and grew until it turned toxic. My parents would never say that my worth was conditional on what I was able to achieve or how well I was able to succeed at what I did. However, the implied message that I perceived growing up when I did, where I did, how I did, was that your worth as a person was absolutely conditional. Conditional on the grades you received, the sports you played, the way you looked, the way you behaved. I was not the only one who experienced this kind of pressure and dealt with this kind of anxiety. And it does not simply go away when you get older. I know people who feel pressure at work to meet their sales quotas, to win the case for their clients. I know people who have a hard time going to family gatherings because they are made to feel inferior for who they are. Oh, look at you. You're still single. Well, maybe someday. Or, oh, so you're getting a divorce? Well, you know your father and I never had that problem. Maybe you're not trying hard enough. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, all you need to do is go out into a public place and glance around, because I guarantee you that there is someone very close to your proximity who knows exactly what I'm talking about. If you do know what I'm talking about because you've experienced or are experiencing a version of this heavy expectation and the anxiety that comes as a result, this is why stories like the one we just heard from our faith tradition are so important to hear and internalize. The creation story is not a science story. It's not a biology story about how God made life. Not at all. It is a theological story that says creation. All that is, all that can be perceived, everything that breathes, everything that is around you is inherently and unconditionally good. This idea of unconditional positive regard to another, that is such a countercultural narrative. You are good, you have worth, you are loved without conditions simply because you are. What? Seriously? We don't hear that. You are part of God's creation, and what God has called good cannot be called anything else. We live in a time right now where the dominant voices in our culture, that the voices that are loud, are so much focused on hate and difference and are always conditional. This kind of unconditional positive regard is jarring. I need to say that this does not make your anxiety just go away, though. These stories that we hear from the biblical story, they're not just a magic pill that simply makes life easy or worry and stress-free. However, perception is reality. And the stories that we tell ourselves matter because they are a lens through which we see our lives. Lord knows that we have enough voices giving us conditions for wholeness and value. We need a new story, a different way of seeing ourselves and others. And today you are called to hear that your life has worth before you do or even say anything. Today you are called to hear that those who are different from you are loved as they are simply because they are part of God's good creation. And so if you are a parent, talk about this with your kids regardless of how old they are, because even if you think they know this, like my parents did, your kids might not, or at least they might be drowned out by all of the other voices that they hear in life. Remind them and yourselves with words and actions that we are loved no matter where we find ourselves or what we're dealing with, simply because God makes it so. This is a story worth hearing. May it impact your life in meaningful ways. Thanks be to God for that. Amen. As a way of taking today's story deeper into your personal life and applying it directly to where you are, here are a couple of reflection questions that you can pray about, journal about, talk about with somebody. Question number 1, how much stress and pressure did you experience growing up? How much do you experience now? And question number 2, do you give others unconditional positive regard? Have you experienced it? How will this biblical concept shape your life?